All right. So I am here, and let me go let people know that I'm on here. All right. Let's go over here. Okay.
What's up?
What up?
I was hoping you were doing your live video. I was gonna walk.
I am.
Right now.
I just turned it on.
Oh, you did?
Yep, just about 44 seconds ago.
Yeah. See, I was gonna walk back here with a rotor. I'm like, hey, where's the Apex Hills at?
Yep. Let's see if anybody's gonna. Somebody's on. All right. So I'm going live for an hour. So.
Let me get the Lotus.
All right. I'll see you later. All right. So I see we got 2 people on here. Can any of y'all comment? Trying to make it to where I can get some comments on here. There we go. All right. Yeah, I can see your comment. All right, so you got a question? Let's see if I can, and then I'll try to see if I can help you with it. And are you on a phone or a computer right now? You can answer that after you finish, if you're trying to make a comment right now. Okay, cool. Let's see. I almost think what do y'all think about going to Zoom instead? Do y'all think that would be better so that we can have live video? Because, I mean, there's not that many people, so probably might make things simpler. Let me see if I can get on Zoom real quick. Rather than having y'all have to comment. Or can you even use Zoom on your phone very easily? Let's see. All right. Let's see. No, not just here to see what there is. Well, what kind of, where are you trying to go? Are you trying to swap? I mean, obviously you're here because you're thinking about swapping a car, an RX-8. But what, like, you know, what engine or what kind of price range or anything like that you're wanting to know about? Looks like we got. Well, I mean, I guess I could talk some about the wiring. It seems like a lot of people have had questions about the wiring. So how does that work? So with the wiring, or did I might have talked about that the other night. But so the wiring, how you use it is the GM system operates just the drivetrain. And whenever I say drivetrain, that's engine, transmission, and differential, which it has no command for the differential. But That's what I'm referring when I talk about drivetrain. Let's see. Let me go over here to some of the questions that people had, though. Let's see. What's up, Casey?
Yeah, right, man.
And this is Casey. I'm on. This is some of the guys from the RX-8 group. This is one of the first guys actually that I built an LS swap car for. That's a headlight for your truck.
Yeah.
He has a green one with an LS. It's an LS1. We're gonna have to put the new headers on it so we can see what kind of power it picks up. It made some pretty disappointing numbers with the CX Racing headers for what it's done to it. So hopefully we can change that. Let's see. Where is? I guess I'm gonna have to go to my announcements. Let's see. So one of the guys asked about different rack and pinions. So with my kit, I only have it to where it's supported to use the factory RX-8 rack and pinion with the electronic power steering. I've chosen to keep that because I like the electric steering. I think it simplifies things. Even though it is a little more bulky, it's a little heavier. I think that's the better option and route personally, which is why I haven't added other rack options. Along with, it seems as though if you're to use a different rack and pinion, you may as well chunk the instrument cluster and all the other stuff that comes along with it, because you're not going to need engine RPM to activate the rack, so therefore you may as well just use an aftermarket instrument cluster, in my opinion. But see, I just really like the feedback or how little feedback the electric rack has versus the some hydraulic ones, along with no leaking hoses potentially, no power steering pump winds and issues. Which, not that the electric rack is problem free, but I just think that it's a better way of going about it. Let's see. One guy, Ryan, asked about the 15-inch wheel specs. I don't remember what wheels they were. Wheel specs as far as that goes. But I do know that they were 15x10s, and they were Weld Racing wheels. I think they were Fox body offset, but I cannot. They have different wheels for different Fox bodies, so it is different. I think they have one or two different options. I don't remember what the ones that I was running was, but I do know that in order to make them fit, you do have to shave the knuckle. As crazy as it is, you got to shave the bleeder screw on the brake caliper, and I think a ball joint some. It's not a horrible amount of material, but it is definitely kind of cutting close on the edge of how much I would recommend. Let's see. And then another guy asked about the turbo manifolds. I have a set of hooker headers, the single ones. I didn't really like. They kind of point straight toward the radiator. I think it's kind of in the way. So this guy, Rare Imaging, that's another buddy of mine that's actually local. He has another RX-8 that I built. We just finished his white one. He's working on some videos of us doing the complete install. Let's see. How much HP does the Explorer rear end hold? As far as the Explorer rear end, I I don't think it really matters whether it's the Explorer or the Thunderbird or even the Cobra. All of them will hold. I mean, I think plenty of power. Um, I mean, if you use it in factory form, the Explorer is an open diff. So, I mean, you're not going to want to keep the open diff. Then you're just going to have what some people call one tire fire. You only have one tire that'll spin, like it's not a limited slip where both of them spin. So you can't slide or drift the car at all with the factory one. So you would want to change out that what do you call it? The chunk to where you have an LSD, which is a limited slip differential. So that is something. Yeah, if you've got the limited slip differential, I have no idea what that limit is. I mean, mine was a Thunderbird diff. And I still had the factory limited slip setup in it. All I did was upgrade the clutches, and I mean, I trapped 151 in the quarter mile. So I don't think that the differential itself you're gonna see a limit there at all. I had heard some people say that, oh, you need a 31 spline, but I mean, my Thunderbird was a 28 spline, so I don't think it even matters there, which the Explorer is a 31 spline differential, so even still, you don't have to worry about that either. Let's see. But for those who are interested in my twin turbo setup, I did use I did make my own custom manifolds. I actually have them in the back. I've never actually even shown them to anybody. Let me. I'll have to get them later. Let's see. Let's see what's something else. So one of the guys said he said something about the wiring. As far as the wiring, how I have it to where the LS harness powers the car, or the engine harness is you only need to have one ignition source power for, if you use the PSI harnesses that we sell, you'll use that one wire that is red. And once you give that power, it turns everything on, and it gets its main power feeds from the starter. So that's where the power supply is, where the red power that you're using is all it is using to activate the relay. So it is not a heavy gauge wire at all. You can use, I think I was using the engine control 1 fuse. Let me see. I think it was a white and blue wire. Let me look it up real quick and see if I can find it. Let's see. I'm sure that you with the Explorer diff, for the as far as people wonder how much the horsepower the rear ends can take. Typically, like when it comes to the RX-8 rear end, it's not actually the differential's limitation, which is the problem with the RX-8. It's actually the gear ratio. That's one of the problems. That's a major factor. And then it's also, what's a big problem is because it only uses 3 points to hold the differential into place, it causes a very weird and awkward rotating force that makes it to where it puts a huge amount of stress on the rear subframe and therefore tears the subframe mounts off. So that's actually more of why the differentials are problematic. That, and I mean, if you're making 400 wheel horsepower, the gear ratio of the RX-8 differential is holding you back a lot. So that's another reason in which that's another reason why I recommend getting rid of that. Let's see, and then let me get in here. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, so Rakima is actually the reason why I even found out that which is Rare Imaging, is why the first person that ever had a subframe broke before. Let's see. So right now I'm looking up the wiring diagrams for the RX-8, so I can tell you which fuse I actually power the General Motors PCM with. Let's see. So it is the EGI Comp 1, or no, it's the engine injector fuse, which is 15 amps, and it is a white and blue wire. So that white and blue wire, you can find that. It is in the, if you're working with the S1, it is a large, about this big, rectangular connector, and that's where the white and with a blue stripe wire will be. That's where you can get the power to use for the PSI harness to turn the, for the activation wire is what it is. It's a small red wire. Let's see, so does anybody else have any questions that y'all can think of right now? Let's see if I can go see if anybody else had any other questions that I might not have covered. Let's see. I'm going to try and go through some questions that people had. So one person the other day looks, he was asking about the difference between an LS1 and an LS3. As far as the engine mounts doesn't matter what LS series you use. As long as it's an LS series, it will work. If you do go to the LT, it will require different mounts. There's going to actually be a lot of different things with the LT than the LS. Let's see. So anybody else have any questions right now? Let's see. See, so I think somebody mentioned something about oil pans. For those that you might not have known, the only pan that will work. Let's see, hold on. How difficult was turbo setup for a little bit? The turbo setups are extremely difficult because of how little space there is. It yeah, the CDO9 is a good transmission. I like that transmission. I've never personally used it in an RX-8, but I have used it. I have been in cars with the CDO9, and it does. I like that transmission, and it's probably a good match for your 373 gear ratio as well. Let's see, but go back to the turbo setup. If you, in my opinion, if you're not trying to make more than 600 wheel horsepower, I think that you should leave the turbo side of things alone, because it's just, it's a lot of work and makes just so much, it causes so many potential problems to come up with, and there really aren't any supercharger options that really fit all that well either. So in my opinion, if you want to make upwards to 600 wheel horsepower, I would recommend using an LS3, camming it, and put some nitrous on it. It's going to make things so much simpler, and in the end, going to take a lot less time, a lot less trying to figure out. And if you're trying to go beyond the 600 horsepower mark, that's when I think it would be time to try to turbo. But it definitely can be quite difficult to just keep oiling right. Like, I mean, I had my turbos under the headlights, which did make some difficulty with oil draining. I ended up having to make a hard line from my turbo all the way down to the oil pan because there just isn't enough drop. I think it was like right at the edge of an inch of drop per foot, which is the bare minimum that people talk about. Let's see. In order to get 400 to 500 wheel horsepower, it would be really difficult to make that out of a 5.3 without putting some nitrous on it. I mean, if that's the only motor you have, a cam and 150 shot will get you in between your numbers. And I mean, 150 shot's pretty safe if you're doing it correctly. So, but I mean, in my opinion, I think long term it would be cheaper if you were to end up getting an LS3 really, rather than the 5.3, because it's just really hard to squeeze that kind of power out of a 5.3. Although you can, but I mean also if you ever do try to sell it, a 5.3 is not going to sell like an LS3 would in the car, or even an LS1 really. Are you putting that in tonight? Oh, okay.
I'm almost done. I'm just on the passenger side. Because
Okay.
on that, I wouldn't have passenger loadings at all.
Oh. Didn't you get a ticket for that just the other day?
I hope not.
Or maybe, no, that was another guy that did. He came in here, we were fixing his light, and the guy gave him a ticket
What?
the next day. Yeah. Let's see. What transmission were you wanting to put behind that 5.3 though? Were you wanting to use an automatic or a manual? I think if I were to be using a manual with an any LS motors, the ones that I would use would be either the T56, the TR6060, or the CDO9. And the TR6060 being the most expensive to do, that one is going to require a $1,000 drive shaft. So, whereas the CDO9 and the T56 are going to be probably around $500 for the drive shaft. The CDO9 is probably a lot easier to find than the T56, though. They're just getting pretty difficult to find now. Like, how much did you pay for yours?
I think $1,500.
And then you had it built. Then you had to rebuild it after spending $1,500. So
It was another $2,200.
yeah, so then you spent $2,200 on the T56 that you bought for $1,500. So, whereas a CDO9, I think you can pick them up for like $800. It seems like that's about the going rate for those. So it might be a better option to get one of those. Let's see. Could you talk more about the CDO9? Let's see. So we got as far as the CDO9, yeah, the CDO9 is fairly even still. Yeah, is $1,800 brand new for the CDO9. I'm not super familiar with all of the different ways that you can do the CDO9, but I'm pretty sure that you could use a bell housing adapter versus doing the cut and then bolt, which I think is what they do for the 2JZ. I haven't really looked. I would go to Collins But I would imagine that you would not have a problem with a bell housing adapter instead of using, like I said, cutting the bell housing off. That does make things a little more difficult, whereas I think you can get away without that. And I would go look at Collins adapters for that. As far as the turbo for an LQ9, what are you trying to do with the LQ9? Like, I mean, what are you trying to do with the car? Are you driving it around the street, or are you just driving it the race drag strip? I mean, what do you want the turbo for in the car? Like, what's the purpose for the car? I mean, if you're just trying to do a street, I'll talk about the throttle pedal in just a minute. As far as that goes, I think I would probably try to get like a T4 76 or 72 millimeter. That's probably around the size. So that would probably be something like, as far as the AR, I'm not quite sure. Let me go look on that. Let's see. We'll just say 76 millimeter turbo. And it's also going to really matter. So I'm using this is if you were to use like an eBay turbo. If you're using like one of those turbos from like Precision or something, you're probably going to be able to get away with a lot smaller turbos. I think they're a lot more efficient, but probably something like a T4, probably a 96 AR 76. If you're using something like a Precision or something like that, you can probably get away with 72 without, and it's not going to be that laggy. Because I mean, in the end, I don't really like laggy turbos. But my expectations of what laggy is may be different than others. When I had twin 66s on my car, it was extremely laggy, and I didn't really like it. I liked the twin 62s a lot better. So I would say, well, I mean, it also matters how much power you're trying to make. Because I mean, if you're trying to make too much power. So another thing is VS Racing. I think that's another company that sells some pretty decent turbos. Let's go look at theirs. Let's see, 78. Let's look at this. They don't really rate theirs by the horsepower on here, it doesn't seem. Maybe the VSR 7665. What size is that? Compressor turbine. I mean, the 7665 on VS Racing is probably a decent size. If you're trying to make 900 horsepower, you're gonna need a big turbo. You're gonna have to get even as big as a T6 flange in order to make that kind of power. And you're going to have to run a lot of boost. I mean, my car on 22 pounds, it corrected, it made, or uncorrected, it made 1,016. It was really cold. And that was, I think, like 10-1 on an LQ9 or LQ4. It didn't really matter once you put forged pistons and stuff in it. But to make 900 horsepower, you're going to need a pretty good sized turbo. Let me go look and see if VS Racing's big turbos over here. Let me go back. That's probably going to be like a freaking 80 millimeter turbo now. But it's definitely going to have a little more lag, but not like, let's see. Like here's one. Here's a 94. Let's see. I guess this one's going to probably be the smallest. Yeah. So the VSR 75 millimeter billet I don't know if I would. Well, this says 1100 flywheel, so you should be able to make that with this VSR 79. Here, I'll copy and paste it in the chat real quick. So that is the turbo that would. They claim that can do that. Probably going to be a bit more laggy than I would like. But I mean, you're going to have to sacrifice something to have a single turbo setup make that kind of power. Otherwise, if you were to twin turbo it, I would say probably around. I like this 62 millimeter turbos. As far as the drive-by-wire though, you're gonna. I have found. Well, what engine are you using? Are you using a Gen 3 or a Gen 4 engine? Because that's going to make a difference of what pedals you can use also. Let's see, LQ4, so that's Gen 3. You're going to have to use like a 2000, a C5 Corvette pedal for that. And unfortunately, you're going to have to use the TAC box as well. So you're going to need the TAC control module with your PCM, because that's the only. Well, I mean, there's that in the truck pedals, but the truck pedals don't fit very well, and I don't like them at all. Yeah, and Camaros didn't come with electronic throttle bodies, so. But as far as the throttle body goes, you can use the newer model throttle bodies. Like you can use like an LS2 or LS3 throttle body, even with the Gen 3 stuff. So I just think they look a lot cleaner, a lot nicer. How tight is the intake manifold hood? It can be pretty close. Really, I mean, the only intakes that I've found that'll work are. I wish I could. I'll see if I can't put a link in here to the intake manifolds. Let's see. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna paste a link in the comments for y'all to go to so that y'all can see. This is not the exact company I bought the intake from, but that's the link to the intake. That intake and all the fast intakes and all the factory car intakes fit. But with that intake, if you notice, the intake is the throttle body is pointing more downward. It's like, I don't know, probably 20 degrees, 30 degrees. I don't know how fit the ones that are flat work. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure. I haven't tried all that many intake manifolds, but I know I've used the Fast 102, Fast 92, all the LS1, LS2, LS3 intakes work. And then that intake. Those are the only ones I've personally used. The Mazda pedal, no, you can't use the Mazda pedal with it. The reason is because it's gonna the pedal uses a different voltage reference than the GM pedals. So how the throttle pedals work is the voltage is on some. So if you look at it this way, so the voltages with the 5-volt reference, they go opposite. So this will be, let's say, 4.5 volts and at max throttle, and this will be like 0.2 volts. And so as you accelerate, it's doing this with those sensor voltages. Whereas I think the Mazda pedal, actually, it's like they're really close to each other and they're going the same direction. And they'll be like a half a volt apart or so, or even less than that potentially. So the signals are completely different. And that's why you can't use the Mazda pedal for the General Motor control modules. I mean, you could alter the pedals, but I mean, it's just, at that point, it's not worth it. Let's see. Let's see. Might just if you don't have the computer, it's a blue and green computer. Is the drive-by-wire, and then the blue and red computers are the drive-by-cable. So, I mean, if you think drive-by-cable is a better route for you, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference. Although I do not like the Gen 3 electronic throttle setup. I like the Gen 4 because the pedal goes straight to the PCM, and then the PCM sends it straight to the engine computer. So that's just an additional module with the Gen 3 setup that I just don't like having to deal with, because then you got to put it somewhere, and the box is like this big. I mean, it's like, I don't know, like it's probably 5 inches by about 6 to 8 inches, and so I don't particularly like them. Although, I mean, they have worked and proven to work, I just don't like having to deal with them. Let's see. And then I think it's Juwan, or I don't know how you pronounce your name, but anyway, with your turbo setup, are you planning to build your engine, or are you trying to use the factory bottom end? Where here are the announcements. Let's see if I can search in here. Let's see. And does anybody else have any questions that I could go over? Yeah, yes, you do need to remove that that brace out that holds the battery. What I like to use is the spot. They have a spot welder tool that you can drill the spot welds out, and I prefer to do it that way to get that bar out. I found that to be the easiest way, and it makes it look a lot cleaner than trying to cut it out. Turn on. Power steering's working, but the fans don't seem to turn on. Want to turn on. You're going to have to look over the wiring. You really need a power probe to be looking at that to be able to determine why the fans aren't turning on. Let's see. One of the ways, well, you're going to have to know electrical pretty decently to be able to get that. I'll see if I can't post a picture of the fan diagram real quick in the page so that you can try to use that to determine how to get those fans working. It'll show you how it's all laid out, and hopefully that'll help you figure it out. If you use aluminum, I think you're going to have a 4.5-inch drive shaft. If you use aluminum, where I think you can get away with a 3 or 3.5 with the steel, I'd have to call my my drive shaft guy to talk to him about what they recommend. But I mean, it's not that much more really even to get a stronger drive shaft. Let's see, I can ground relay. Doesn't want to. Yeah, I definitely understand that. As far as trying to, yeah, you don't want to run the motor hot at all. Let's see. So, all right. So I am going to print this out. That's the power. I'm going to highlight some stuff in here so that you can see how this is working. You know what? Rather than doing all of this. So, oh, I do have a question. Does your coolant temperature gauge work, or do you know if it works? Let's see. Okay. All right. Let's see. So blue. All right. So that's going to go through there. Ground that. Ground this. I'm trying to figure out how I can highlight this to this diagram so that it'll help you figure out how this works. Let's see, so that's being powered straight there. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this diagram real quick. Let's see, save this PDF. Yeah. Let's see. Cooling. Diagram. All right, so I'm gonna go over here and do that. All right, so I'm going over to Facebook real quick to the group, and I'm going to post the diagram for the cooling fans in the group so that you can look over it. I've highlighted the control wires, and I'm going to try to make it to where you can understand, or I can easily explain how it works. Okay. Cool. Diagram. All right. So I just posted the PDF for that cooling fan diagram inside of the what do you call it? Inside the group as a file. So I have two wires highlighted. There is a black and a blue and a red and green. So what these are the activation wires. When you look at the diagram, so one's going to need to be power and one's going to be the ground in order for it to activate that relay. So what you need to do is you need to check to see which one's power, which one's ground. I would highly recommend when you're trying to check this to disconnect all three relays so that you can isolate which side is which. Otherwise, when you check one, it should show the same on both sides until it's turned on. So you would need to remove the relays prior to trying to check these wires to see. But in the end, one needs to be power and one needs to be ground in order to activate the relay. So once you figure that out, and the engine computer is responsible for turning those relays on. And then if you would like to bypass that, you would need to jump the relay, the power from the blue wire and the black and red wire. And you'll see how and you're just completing that circuit rather than the relay completing it. all of that, I would recommend doing it with the relays out in order to determine that. How do you go about the radiator setup? That's going to really depend on what your what setup you're doing. I have been using the C7 radiator for a while. I've found that I like that one the most. I made some mounting. I mean, it works. It's not as good as I would like it to be. I haven't had any issues with it. I just don't like how it looks, and how it ships. So, and then I also don't know how well the undercarriage can work with the different different undercarriages, because it's really hard to find one that has the plastic shields underneath the car. But I do have all of the radiator hoses and lines that I use for that radiator. With the C7 radiator, I do stand it vertically. It does not go at an angle, or if it does, it's like 10 degrees. It isn't much at all. In order to go from a manual to an auto, so what do I have to do to make it an automatic? You're going to need to have to get an automatic shifter. Well, or you can use any shifter. An aftermarket shifter, a lot better to use. I don't know which one will work. I've been using the factory shifter, but it doesn't work. The clicks don't line up with the indicators on the shifter, so you kind of have to get used to how that works. And then I would recommend swapping out all the pedals for the automatic, and then your park neutral switch would now be, you'd have to wire it from your manual clutch switch. That's what you have. Or you can just bypass it completely so that you'll be able to start the car. That's going to go in line with the circuit for the starting circuit. So that's going to either help or it'll prevent you from being able to spin it over with the key. Let's see. The factory radiator works, but that's another one that I just don't really. I like the C7 radiator more than the factory radiator, although I have used the factory radiator for a while. Like Casey's car that was just with me, he's actually using an all aluminum RX-8 radiator, and he ended up getting an aftermarket fan that we ended up putting inside of it. He hasn't had any overheating issues with it, although it is a dual stage fan, and it can move a lot of air. It's like 4,000 or 5,000 CFM. I don't know what fan that is. It's a single fan, and I do know that we did have to move his radiator some in order for it to work, because it was a very thick fan. But I mean, the factory radiator is, and even its remote location, more like, because it doesn't work in the exact same location because the motor's so much further forward. The balancer is in the way. Don't laugh. Let's see. But I do got to go. I can, if y'all come up with some other questions, go ahead and ask in the group, and I'll see if I can't address them next week. And I will see y'all next week.